Namaskar, Namaste, welcome to Hillside and to our journey through the fascinating world of African diaspora genealogy and ancestry. My name is Bishop Jack Bomar and I serve as the presiding bishop here at Hillside. And I'm excited for you to join our members and founders of Good Genes Genealogy Services who will guide you through our amazing stories and discoveries from other Hillside members. You will also have a chance to learn more about how to trace your genealogy on an interactive technology platform also included in this video presentation. Before I conclude, I want to share with you my initial journey into my family's genealogy. A couple of years ago, I invited Dr. Ann Kimbrough to join me in tracing my ancestry and could only go as far back as my great-grandfather and great-grandmother at the time on my mother's side. And through her services and that of her assistant cousin Mark, I learned a lot about my family that I didn't know, and come to find out my great-grandfather was a lieutenant in the armed forces, the Army, and no one in my family knew that. And so what it has done is it's brought such enlightenment to the family and a sense of pride and joy and knowing who we are. And for many instances in our culture, we can only go back so far in our history. Their services and that of Dr. Ann and what they were able to share has been such a blessing to me and my family. So I want to encourage you to embark upon this journey. Get ready for an exciting time. Thank you so much for joining our community of legacy enthusiasts and story seekers. Let's begin.
From the time I was a child was that I realized I never met any of my grandparents, and I knew only my father because my mother was an only child. He had 3 other brothers. Those were the only relatives I knew. And I just thought, wow, I know there are other ancestors. And I never really knew who they were. They didn't talk about them. Even though we had family gatherings, nothing was ever said about those that weren't there. And we didn't have a large family. Everybody had 1 or 2 children. So there weren't 13 in one and 14 in another. I was very, very curious.
So you had that burning inside feeling that you needed to know more about your family.
Absolutely.
In February of 2021, our church gave a genealogy sessions called The Bible Tells Us So. And quite honestly, I really didn't have any interest in looking at the genealogy information, but mainly because I knew I was an adopted child since I was 7. I had no interest in finding out my biological family at the time, and I wasn't sure I really wanted to dig into genealogy for my adopted family because I didn't really know that much about their history. But my spouse was doing it, and I assisted her in her Zoom and getting it set up and got enthralled listening to Dr. Ann Weed Kimbrough and Mark S. Owen talking about genealogy and talking about the history. And that sparked an interest in my heart.
They say Daddy changed his name to Sam Wilson because it was Isaiah Hezekiah, and he and some white man got into a fight. He killed a white man, and he had to change his name because he was in the Conservation Corps. And I said, okay. And he says he's from New York. But when I looked, it looked like he was from Heflin, Alabama. So I said, okay, somebody's not telling the truth. Somebody's definitely not telling the truth.
So you've done some of your first steps.
Oh yeah, when they told me that, I said, let me look into this, because I didn't know. And then they're gonna tell me, when I say they, I'm talking about my niece, he showed me a picture of his mom and dad. And Dad was black, and Mama was white, and they were in St. Elizabeth. I said, St. Elizabeth, that's Jamaica. Yes. I said, so what happened? Let me see the picture. I don't know where I put it. I said, okay.
It was actually almost 35 years ago in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I took a video class at Black Museum, and he taught us how to interview our relatives and tape it to have for future use. And he also had a genealogist come and speak to that class, and that immediately sparked my interest. So I did that summer interview 2 of my great aunts, and I still have that, and of course at this time have digitized those interviews. And then at that time there was not much available on the internet. So I actually drove about 2 hours from Milwaukee to Madison to the university's library to do search, but it was all on microfiche. So you weren't able to bring things home. You could try to copy what you could. And because of what that all entailed, I lost some interest at that time, kind of put it on the back burner. So over the years, I went back and looked at it and tried to go a little further. My sister had the wonderful idea in the 70s to interview my grandparents. And then in later years, we interviewed my mother and her siblings. So we have all of that on video, and I've got most of those videos that I'm gradually digitizing. So it was an excellent start of some very good information.
Talking with the members that were still there. We had so few because it was a small family. Mom was an only child. Her father, of course, lived with us. I was curious about Dad's side because only thing I knew was that his father, he came from Culpeper, Virginia. And why they settled in a little one-horse town called Leroy, New York, I'll never know. And I always fought him because he had 4 girls that, at least this one, thought they should be in Hollywood. So he had to live with that nonsense.
Were you among those 4 girls?
I was one of those 4 girls.
Who was that one to be in Hollywood, for the record?
Well, this little one-horse farm he had us on, I was not happy with. And the thing of it is, and I wouldn't trade it for all the world now, losing Dad at 17, because that's how old I was when he passed. I was so disappointed because there have been years afterwards, just millions of questions that I wish I had asked him, that I didn't. But I had my mom till 88, and every year that I'd visit her, it was about take the recorder and listen to your mother, because Mom didn't talk. She was a very quiet Indian, and so it was very hard for her. She never said anything about how she grew up. She never once mentioned what it was like in her day. She just never talked about that. So she really actually went to her grave with all of those secrets. So I wanted to find out more about who and what I am.
And speaking of your mother transitioning, did she leave behind anything for you to find out more about her?
Not at all. Nothing. And that's why I said I'm going to have to do my own investigation. She had no cousins. I mean, we have cousins. I found them through talking to others and finding out where some of my family members were. Mm-hmm. And that's how I really started in talking with them and trying to get an idea of what the family tree looked like on Mom and Dad's side.
So during COVID, when many of us were trying to figure out things to do, I took the journey on looking through genealogy to see if I could find my adoptive family's information. I really didn't have that much about my mother's side or my father's side. I was born in the era of children are to be, that's not necessarily seen, but they definitely weren't around to hear anything that adults were talking about. So there was a lot of misinformation that I did not have. And since both my adoptive parents had transitioned and my stepfather had transitioned, and that year, unfortunately, the elder in our family, the matriarch, had also transitioned. I had to start from scratch. So I had a friend, and you might have already been introduced to her. Her name is Valerie Tolliver, who was doing her genealogy and found out a lot of wonderful information. And I decided, hey, I've got some pictures of some of my family, and their names. If you could go online and just see if you could see anything, and let me know. Well, lo and behold, the exact same pictures of my mother's sisters, my mother who adopted me, and cousins were online.
Ask your nearest and oldest relative find something to get a handle to, and then go from there.
Start with who you know. Start with your closest known relatives and ask questions. I've told the young people that even if your parent is only in her 30s, 40s, 50s, still start the conversation, because it may be something that she doesn't remember to tell you about when she's in her 70s and 80s. You know, so start the conversation, take good notes, video if you can, and then compare notes. Talk to other relatives, see what their feeling is about that same situation. Just start the conversation. Unfortunately, my mother in her later years had Alzheimer's. So I lost those last years to get more information. Gratefully had asked a lot of questions up until then, but before I became more trained in what I'm doing, I didn't know the right questions to ask. But I got enough information to know where to go from there to search further. So ask questions, take good notes, find a means to record what you have. Find an inexpensive tree program so you can see visually what that looks like, and then build on it from there. I blessedly have one aunt that's still living, who's 90, who has very good recall, very solid in her memory. So I'm able to ask her questions, and then I go and I check on Ancestry, and it all matches up. Because you're right, Big Mama did live with them. I couldn't understand what happened. And she explained to me what happened about her getting ill and having to leave the country so she can be closer to her doctors and things like that I wouldn't have known by just seeing something in black and white that she's at that cousin's house. Well, what I did, excuse me, when I moved here from Wisconsin, I did join Ancestry, and I went forth and did the DNA test. And blessedly, just a matter of years ago, before my mother transitioned, was able to do her DNA test. And that has opened up so many doors for me, because I have some of the factual information, or at least oral information given by my maternal side of the family. But to be able to go online and to find confirmation of information they've given and to expand that information further. The DNA test allowed me to meet cousins I didn't know about. I even met a half-niece on my biological father's side that I didn't know existed. I was not raised with my father and his son. So I met a niece that's still living, and she has children. So that opened up some doors. And meeting other relatives through my mother's little country church just recently, talking to a lady who we ended up exchanging names, and I found out when I came home to research that, yeah, she's a distant cousin.
I got blessed with a gift and 23andMe, and I received that. And that was an eye opener, because the most that I knew of my background was Caribbean, where my mom, my grandfather, her father is from Jamaica, Kingston, but my father, the only thing I knew of his background was Culpeper, Virginia to Leroy. I was told I had so much of a Narragansett Indian because my mother is Native American, but that is a Rhode Island group. Nobody's ever really heard of them. They were one of these that weren't fighters, and so you don't read about them in anything about indigenous people, but they're out of Rhode Island. They do have a little museum there. I took my mother. She was not impressed. It wasn't very big. But that's how much I knew about myself. But when I got 23andMe, I found out that I not only have relatives, or I come from not just the Caribbean, but also Africa also. So I was excited about that. And that's where I have been interested in finding more about that. And then you, of course, had told me Ancestry.com.
I decided to join Ancestry.com and let's see if I can find some more information. So I started digging and digging, and I did find a family tree that was related to mine, but the stories didn't match up. Some of the names didn't necessarily match up. So I was still at a loss, and I kept running into brick walls here and there. And quite honestly, I got a bit discouraged. And then in 2022, I decided to see if I could find out some information about my family, my biological family, because I had heard that in Jersey they had released the information where you could find out who your biological family was, or you could find out information on who adopted your child because they had released all the records. So again, here I am digging, and I ran into some brick walls again. So I went back to the genealogy for my adoptive family, and I actually started finding more information because I realized that because I knew the spelling of the name and because I knew where they lived and because I knew the dates didn't necessarily mean that the records online were accurate. So as I looked at information that was on the 1930 census, I realized that although someone had believed that the name written there was Boggs, I could tell from the writing it was Burks, and it was my adoptive family's information. So I was so excited. I found out pictures of my great grandparents, and I found the information on my Aunt Lizzie, who was actually Georgia. And although I was born in Jersey, adopted in Jersey, my family was originally from here in Georgia, Decatur, Georgia, as a matter of fact. But I kept still running into some brick walls because although I could find my mother's sisters, Rose, Olivia, and Lizzie, my Uncle Henry, her brother, because she was the youngest, I couldn't find any information on her. None. No census records at all, and I know she was born in 1925. So I was a bit disheartened again. But as I was disheartened about that information and a little bit disheartened about not being able to find the records for my biological family, my spouse did something wonderful and unexpected. She ordered the Ancestry kit. So in, I believe it was May of, because it was for Mother's Day, May of 2023, I did the Ancestry DNA kit and sent the information in. And in July of 2023, I got my results back with hits for family and cousins and a whole slew of people I had never heard of because I had no information whatsoever about my family. And I called the first person that was a second cousin. It was a woman because the first cousins were males. And I felt a little odd or a little something or some kind of way about introducing myself to people I didn't know as a child that they may not have any idea about. But I took a deep breath and I called her, and she was very friendly. She was very cooperative, but she had no information to give me. She had no knowledge, she had no record, she had no idea. And in fact, she was looking for information as well. That's why she was on Ancestry. So again, I took the advice of Dr. Ann Weed Kimbrough and said, contact that first cousin because your first cousin would actually be your mom's or your dad's brother or sister. So I took a deep breath. I emailed them because they did have their information on Ancestry. And I simply said, hello, I am Sharon Hodnett. My birth name was Sharon Denise Gray. I was born on August 19th, 1965. And I know I was adopted and we are a biological match. Do you have any information? And although I know this may come out of the blue, if you do have any information, please contact me. And I left my email and telephone number. The next day, he contacted me and he was very excited about finding out more information. But he said another cousin may be able to assist me further. So he contacted other cousin because the other cousin had a whole DNA family tree. So I contacted that cousin, and lo and behold, that's my family. It is my family.
I did not realize, I knew Dad's fathers came from Culpeper, Virginia. I didn't know that my father graduated from Leroy High School. And when you brought me that picture, to see Dad again was one of the most wonderful moments, just to see his name and to see that face, because it's been so
And
many
his
years.
accomplishments.
And everything that he had done. But he was a man ahead of his time anyway. I knew that. But it was just that I knew Dad for such a short length of time, and I was just 17 when it all ended. So it was wonderful to have that moment of seeing Dad again.
I'll tell you that one of my favorite times, finding your father, as based on the information you gave me, but the wedding.
That was Mom.
So
yes.
describe that for all of us.
That was the other thing I was going to mention to you. When you gave me the newspaper article, my mom.
And what year was that? Do you recall?
1940. Yes, 1940. My mom was raised in Angelica, New York. Angelica, New York is another one of those little bedroom communities near Watkins Glen, New York, which no one has ever heard of, including myself. But to see in their newspaper in 1940 my mother's wedding, getting that kind of acclaim, what she wore, what the flowers were, that was just fantastic, and I was so excited when I got that.
Before I get to the enslavers, what I'd like to mention also is I have an adopted daughter, and lo and behold, she may be a distant cousin that I have found through another DNA match who also matches her. So you never know what you're going to run across.
And so with her, you're still working to get that verified.
We don't know how we're connected. We know that we're connected through the same person. So we need to figure that path. So that's how the journey begins. When you have a question in mind, always start with what do you desire? What do you want to know? And so you take that and you research further. So I've always wanted to know from where my family came from, especially my maternal side. So I also took the African ancestry test and found that our family originated in Nigeria from the Yoruba tribe. A cousin on my dad's side did it as well, and we originated also from Nigeria, from the Hausa side. So I want to know, who is that ancestor? Who is that one that was overseas in Africa, Nigeria, that ended up on a boat and here in America? Now I know that's grandiose desire, but it is my desire to keep going. So what I did was I was blessedly able to find a couple of my relatives, my ancestors, who served in the United States Colored Troops in the Civil War. Those records were included pension files, which included information from who they were enslaved by. That information got me to that enslaver and his records to show who he purchased this ancestor from. From that record, I was able to see that that last name, Shields, was also in my match list. There's a match list of other people who are related to you, normally a large list of cousins. So there's a 4th to 6th cousin with that last name, and we're related by blood. So I researched that backwards, back to his tree, connecting to what I had found. And yes, lo and behold, there was a match. I think it's his 5th great-grandfather, is actually my 3rd great-grandfather, because he not only enslaved my ancestor, which was my 2nd great-grandfather, he fathered him. He is the biological father of my 2nd great-grandfather, who was enslaved in his home. And of course, that would also mean that his mother had been enslaved in that home. Unfortunately, I have no further information on her as of yet, but that is the journey that I'm on now.
And you're still looking, you've been looking for the mother for a long time.
Yes, it takes a long time. That's what people have to be very patient with your research. That you're not going to find it immediately. You have to be committed. If it's something you desire, you have to maintain your commitment and continue to search and find other avenues. When I contacted that cousin, that extended cousin, he was not even aware. In fact, his comment was, no, my ancestors weren't enslavers. And I said, well, did you read the will? He said, yes, I've read the will. And I said, well, did you go to page 6, the third paragraph down, underneath the cattle? It is listed 3 Negroes, and they're listed by name, Allerton, Peggy, and Ben. Ben is my great-great-grandfather. And he actually eventually apologized. He had not searched it that thoroughly. But one thing as a black researcher that we know is when we go to the wills, we have to go past all what the enslaver finds really valuable. And that's every good in his house, from plates to chairs to bedroom furniture, till we get to the animals. And we are always below the animals because although he sees us as a monetary value, we're not as valuable as his animals.
Nobody knows the truth. The stories are flying around. Well, this happened, that happened. I said, no. It's got to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, it's got to be a lie. No, that's what I feel. And then Mama, they say she was given away on the plantation to the lady that we thought, or that we called Grandmama. And then found out later, her mama was down the street around the corner from where we lived in Augusta. And for the longest time, I didn't know who that lady was until the lady we called Grandmama said, that's her mama. She gave sister away when we were on the plantation because she was busy living and she didn't have time for no baby. I said, but wait a minute. Wait, hold up. Slow down. You all, yeah, we were in the cabin and Honey had to leave and she didn't have time to take care of no baby. So I told her, I'd take her. I said, okay. So I left that alone. I said, that's kind of deep. You know.
I found out my mother's name, my father's name, both of which who transitioned, but I'm here and I'm so happy to know the information. I went from being an adoptive daughter, one of 4, youngest of 4, to being the biological oldest of 4. 4s. I found out my grandmother's name. I found out my aunt's names and some amazing similarities. For example, they were looking for me. They were looking for me. All this time, they were looking for me. And that is an incredible feeling to know that people that didn't even know you for over 50 years have been looking for you. I spoke to my cousins and they gave me the number from my aunt. And as it turns out, I was named after her. They didn't know my name because my biological mom was 15 and the family, well, let's not even get into that story. My biological mom was 15. Her sister was 5. And when she went to the hospital, the name she gave them was her sister's name, Sharon Denise Gray. So I'm actually named after my biological aunt, which is another thing that amazes me because, we as a people will find a way, leave a breadcrumb, leave a hint so that people can find each other. And that's how they knew it was me when I sent the email because she had the exact same name. And lo and behold, I got a chance to meet her. We talk often. Um, we met, let's see, we spoke first talked in July, and by August we had already met. And as it turns out, she lives in Georgia in LaGrange. So it was wonderful getting to meet her, but it was amazing that at 57 is the first time I saw someone that looked like me. My aunt and I look a lot alike, and it's wonderful. So I've met my aunt, I've met my nieces, I've met some great nieces. I have met I've not met, but I've talked on the phone to two of my brothers, um, and that's a joy. The patriarch of the family, I speak to him every week. He has given me the most information, and he has just been my heart. So I get a chance to speak with him and laugh with him, share things with him. I even got to share a sermon that I did, and it was just an amazing feeling having someone who just met me, who tells me every time we speak he loves me, how proud he is of me.
To me, the meditation, the just learning to embrace who I am internally brings out all of that and wants it to come out because that's who I am. So that energy is constantly whirling and I want to get it to the highest vibration.
It has definitely given me a greater sense of self. It gives me something to fall back on, to know, as I explained to the young people in my family, I did a presentation at one of our family reunions, is that we're resilient people. We're strong, resilient people. That this great-great-grandfather, as a prime example, after serving in the United States colored troops and having to forfeit some of his pension over to the enslaver because their lost funds, lost profit from allowing this enslaved person to go fight. They get paid back by the government. So that's how that became a paper trail for me to find him. But even after that, he went on to have his own farm, marry, have several children. And one of those children who eventually became my parent because of him. And I'm just so grateful. And that's, like I said, that's just one story. You know, there's others where I found that he had to fight to get any pension while he was living and being disabled from the war. He transitioned, his wife continued to fight. She transitioned, and the children continued the fight, and there was no funds ever given.
It'll help me identify with where grandmama and grandpa, and on his side, his mother and father, how they came together. And if it is Jamaica, okay. If it's not Jamaica, okay. But I know I have an affinity for Jamaican food and the reggae music and all. I know that's probably, and Bob Marley, you know, that's, oh my goodness. I just gravitate toward that.
The whole idea of finding out who you are, who your people are, and then receiving the love. Not that I didn't get love from my adoptive family. I have been loved by every person in my family, my adoptive family, my stepdad, and now I get to get some love from my biological family too. It's just amazing. And there's so many stories I can tell you that have come about from this journey, but it's been an incredible journey.
All of us first cousins said, it's time. We need to see one another. So myself and two other cousins decided we would have what we call a mini reunion. No catered food, no money collected, no t-shirts. We're just gonna get together, we're gonna eat, we're gonna enjoy ourselves and talk, share good times and take pictures, and had a marvelous time.
Because all of us are standing on, to me, the shoulders of giants, and those giants are those people that have come before, that are no longer with us, that we are a part of. And I can feel them. I can feel they're encouraging me to find out about them. One thing I'm very curious about, my father, the only ones I knew were his brothers. He did have a sister. I'd heard her name. I knew I had an Aunt Miriam, but no one talked about her much because she died at a very young age. But she was a teacher, and I've spent my career teaching. So I wanted to know more about her and what happened with her, and what she died of. And, you know, no one talked about anything. So these are the kinds of things that I just know I only stand in my own way by saying I don't have time. I do have time. and I want to make that time for those things that are important, because we need to know where we came from and whose we are.
When you know your history, you're more prone to following your path, whatever it is. Because once you see how your people got to where they got to and got you started, then you realize, something to this. There is a spirit that's moving through everyone's family, and we just need to know where it is. But I tell everybody, we got here on the boat, most of us, if not all of us, got here on the boat, and we survived. So we are the best of the best. I tell them, I don't want to hear that stuff about you can't do. You're here because you are from the best of the best.